he said to me one day, he's like, Jesus, Scott, he says, every time I come to one of your sessions, like I feel like I have a red dot on my forehead and you're about to blow my brains out.
All right, I'm here with Scott Howell. He is the CEO, founder of Red Dot Fitness, podcast host of Iron Sights, and just a world-renowned fitness, health, and wellness practitioner. Man, welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you coming down. I'm always down to hook up with good people, and you're one of those dudes. So I'm just stoked to hang out, man. I feel blessed to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. So yeah, thanks for having me in your amazing studio in San Jose, California. That's the only thing good about California. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. I'm always interested in just kind of like how you got here. I mean, there's just so many evolutions, obviously, in your career and your life, but you've made it your commitment, your life purpose right now, and your mission to be on the forefront of health and wellness and fitness. Like, was there a day that you actually realized, like, this is what I want to devote my life to?
I think it was sort of a discovery over time, but I have a pretty typical story. I was an athlete, and so, fitness and health was always part of my childhood growing up. My dad, grew up around, he was a gymnast. He was very fit. He got out of that, got into bodybuilding. Actually, in the days of Arnold Schwarzenegger, he actually worked for Jack LaLanne for a number of years. A lot of people don't even know who Jack LaLanne is, but so that was part of it. My mom was a nurse for growing up, and so there's a couple of things there. One, there was like this fitness component. My dad was very, very analytical at the same time as an engineer and the things that he was doing. So I watched how he approached his fitness or he approached his health, approached life. Mom on the other side is this nurse who's working in either in the ICU or the ER or the recovery room, over the years that she did. She's this help giver and, was always really concerned with making sure us kids made good decisions about our health, and wanted to see us be successful, in athletics and things like that. So it was just like I really had a solid platform, and I never thought about making a career out of it. I didn't know you could.
I was going to ask, was that just because family upbringing and the idea that you just didn't know that you could make money doing it, or was it something else?
Had no idea. I mean, I think part of it is when I was growing up, you have coaches, right? In various forms in life, but particularly in sports. And then and then as you get a little older, maybe move into the high school areas, you get into your teens, you start to discover there's these things called strength coaches, and then you have the various different types of backgrounds that your coaches came from that you start to learn is an important thing. Like, what was this guy's pathway? And I was fortunate to have a couple of guys, very specifically one early, very influential to me early in high school, that had gone all the way through the college and pro ranks of football. He played in the NFL, played for the New York Giants, and he was pretty successful. But he also grew up in the school of hard knocks. And so this wasn't like the most talented guy on the field. He wasn't the fastest guy on the field. Our dude had to work really hard. And so with that, he also learned how to strength coach, and this guy was a kind of do it all type of dude. And, my thing with coaching and what I grew up around was like, that's just what you did as a coach. You have to know everything there is to know, right? Because he was that guy, right? And that was, again, the most influential coach that I had at that point. So I didn't know that there were these other things. And so it never dawned on me that you could make a career out of it. You were going to be a coach, right? Like you're coaching football, you're coaching weight training, you're coaching basketball, whatever else. I didn't know that there were all these other pieces. And without running on too far about that, I think one of the other things I learned early on is like there's a certain intensity to this. Like there's a certain energy that needs to be brought to the table. And like my coaches beyond this guy, like if they're not like yelling and red in the face and spitting and like pissed off when they lose and up for a minute, when they win, and really just holding people accountable to all the little details of all the different things, like then it wasn't normal. Like that's, to me, that was what was normal. And so, no, I never really had a career path here. I'd actually, had gone a few different directions before I realized no, you could actually make some money doing this. And that came later in my life when I was, in my late teens, early 20s, and I started working out with a coach actually who inspired me to become a coach, and the rest is history.
Okay, talk a little bit more about he inspired you to become a coach. Like, talk about that, or like, because again, here, like you're saying, I really didn't. Yeah, I didn't really think, and what made you then think, okay, yeah, I can do this? That where did that inspiration come? That moment?
Yeah. So the interesting part was, the coach wasn't a he; it was a she.
Oh,
And so I played football, and and I thought I was hugely into wrestling as well, and ultimately that ended for me. So it was over and there were various and sundry reasons, but I'd kind of aged out at one point, and then.
Is this high school, by the way, like the end of high school or college?
This would have been in college.
Okay.
So I played high school, and I went to college, played a little football in college, and then again you start to age out, and then there's the academics piece. I'm like, man, I need to focus. I'm not going to ever play pro football. I never intended on doing that. That was never like a thing. I knew I had enough self-awareness to know I'm never going to be a pro athlete, but I want to ride this thing as long as I can. And so I did that, and then ultimately it's over. And then my whole life I'd been working out for something, right? There was a why, and the why was always be the bigger, faster, stronger, toughest athlete, on the field. There was also the camaraderie that came along with it, and then, as a kid growing up as a teen, there was attention you got from being that guy, being the bigger, stronger, faster dude or whatever. I liked winning; that seemed to be helpful, and then. It was also a way to keep me focused on my academics, because I knew if I wasn't getting it done on the field, in the classroom, they weren't going to let me do it on the field or the mat. So it kept me focused. And the last part about that is it kept me more on the straight and narrow in life. It gave me some structure that kept me out of trouble. Without athletics, I don't know where I would have been. Without fitness, I don't know where I'd be today. I know it wouldn't be here. I would probably be in a much different place. And I know I would have gotten into a ton of trouble. So when all that ended for me, basically football's over one day. Like there will be no more practices, there will be no more games, there will be no more seasons. It turned into, well, now what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
I was already spending a couple hours a day in the gym, because I had this why. I didn't have a why anymore. And because I didn't have that why, I didn't have that structure, right? I didn't have all those other things I just mentioned, which leads you to there's a lot of extra time, space, and places to get in trouble or get distracted. And so that distracted me from school. I wasn't really focused on my academics, because I didn't feel there was value in it, but I just wasn't interested. It's like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And
I was here to play sports.
Yeah,
that's over. Now what?
There was a really strong connection to that, right? And then also the structure, like just through the day, like you have to be out of bed at a certain time to get to get this meal in, to get to class, to get to that, to then wind up, making sure you get your workout in or get to practice on time. Then when you're done, it kind of starts all over. There's time for study, homework, maybe some social time. But all of a sudden that was just completely jacked up and all messed up. Yeah. And so what I found myself doing was spending more time in the gym, right? Like now it's not 2 hours a day, it's 3 hours a day. And I was working out at a place that was very pro bodybuilding at a time, which was that was pretty much what coaching was. You either were a coach in in an athletic scene, or you were a bodybuilder who was training people at the gym to basically be bodybuilders. That's really what they were doing, which was, it's far way different than it was. But you go in the gym, you look around, it's a bunch of bodybuilders in there, and all training very specific ways, but also training their clients exactly the same ways. And I started to see this, and I was enamored by it because I was like, now out of the power and strength athlete stuff, and I was like, well, let me give this bodybuilding thing a try for a while. And I did, and I thought I could be sort of successful with it till you find out the realities about how to be successful as a bodybuilder beyond the nutrition, the working out.
Scott, what are you talking about? Man, what do you mean?
Look, to be quite frank, I dabbled a little bit for a little bit of time in some PEDs when I was a young kid, or not young, but let's say 21 years old. I was like, hey, I'm not into the needles thing, but if it was just a pill, then maybe I could do that, and so, or a tab or whatever like that. So I messed around.
Sounds like you were kind of into some Liver King.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, but certainly not. And at that time, by the way, and this was going to be in the 90s. Drugs, and bodybuilding was a completely different game. I mean, nowadays, and I don't want to condone this, but it is part of the deal. And I think it's a necessary part of the deal, depending on where you're at, what you're doing in terms of making a living. There's a time and a place for PEDs, but PEDs then were way different than they are now. From a toxicity perspective, you had to be really careful, and where they were coming from. I mean, everything was coming across the border from Mexico, and it was nasty. And I saw the effects of all that. I'm like, I'm not going down that path. I'll maybe, dabble a little bit here. But what I found out real quick was like, there was not going to be an answer. That wasn't going to get me to where these guys were competing at. But it was a good experience. My point of this is it was a good experience in that I learned that early on, and I learned I needed to take a different approach. Well, part of that approach was I recognized like nutrition is a thing. And I was a voracious reader. This was before the interwebs the way they are now. There was no social media, any of that stuff. So I was trying to soak up all the knowledge I could. I changed my major to nutrition to try and even go the extra mile on it. And I recognized, Jesus, what they're teaching here and what's really going on out there in the real world. And I don't just mean from a bodybuilding perspective. I mean from people that are looking to just lose weight and tone up, so to speak, was vastly different. And again, I was already having trouble staying focused at school because I didn't really have this direction. So ultimately, I went to the owner of the gym. It was a IFBB competitor, female competitor at the time, and I went to her. I said, "Look, I know I need help with this, and what do I have to do?" She said, "Well, this shit isn't free, And I go, "Well, I get it, but I'm also a broke student, so what can I do?" She's like, "Well, I've seen you work out in here," and we knew one another a little bit. So I've seen you work out in here. I tell you what, she's like, "I need a training partner. I start at 4:30 a.m. You're going to meet me every day, 5 days a week at 4:30 a.m., and you're going to train with me, and I will work with you on your nutrition." I went, "Fucking show me where to sign." So that happened, and very quickly I was kind of shown and encouraged through this coach that, "Hey man, you're pretty good at this. Like, you're good at talking to people. You seem to be picking this stuff up pretty quickly. You like structure, right? You like the education side of things. You're going the extra mile. Have you ever considered doing this?" I'd never considered becoming a personal trainer. And that's really where it started.
Yeah.
So you start going down some pathways, and at the time it was much different than it is now with regard to certifying bodies and things like that. But what I recognized real quick was the college pathway wasn't the pathway for me to get successful as fast as I wanted to be successful. So I took some alternate paths, some alternate routes, and next thing you know, I had no clients, and then I had 5, then I had 20, and then I was running the entire training department. Then I moved to another gym and was running that training department, and then there's a lot of things that happened after that. But I think somewhere in there, I recognized, like, I really love doing this. And I think, I grew up at this time where it was like, find what you love and make that your job, and you're going to make a lot of money and you'll never work a day in your life, which I realize is complete bullshit. But at the same time, that resonated with me because I was like, I'm really into this. And I see other people making good money doing it, so I know it can be done. I wasn't sure how it was going to be done, but there was a time that I was like, this is the way I'm going, and I went all in.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. I mean, I can totally relate to the whole college thing. I went to college, got a degree, didn't do anything for my career, my life, but I was just on a system. I was just told to go get good grades, and so I did it, and I just kept plugging into the system, but never really asked the why. And like, it's so cool that and then you're talking about nutrition class. I remember taking a nutrition class at the JC, and my nutrition teacher was overweight. And I just was sitting there thinking,
too?
Yeah. And I was just, I thought, this is a joke. Like, and I was a voracious reader too. I was reading Muscle and Fitness magazines and stuff. And that was how I learned to get into bodybuilding, was the same. And like you said, we're similar ages. I didn't know anything. Everything was bodybuilding at the time. Now you have all this, you have Louis Simmons, you've got all these, the conjugate method, you've got people doing so much specialized. The information's out there, but back then it just seemed like it was bodybuilding.
You couldn't really get it. That was, you just brought up the nutrition courses. I was taking this at university level, 4-year university level, and I was a guy sitting in the front of the class. I was like, I want to know, so I want to have my question answered and whatever. And same thing, I never was in a nutrition course that the instructor didn't have some type of disordered eating or an eating disorder, that was very obvious, like painfully obvious. And it didn't immediately strike me, but over time, and after I got a little bit disenfranchised with it, I was like, wow, that shit's all fucked up. Like it's really messed up there. And it's old information that just keeps getting passed down. And it was very clinical. And that's not there. I knew right away, I don't want to be working with sick people. I want to be working with people that don't want to be sick. I want to be able to help people that may be a bit sick, but I recognize it's anything beyond that's way outside. I'm going to be way outside my lane. And registered dietitians, those people can have that. But there is this wide open space in the middle. And I was like, that's where I want to be.
I also find it really fascinating, just your gumption to just invest in yourself. I love that story, and that she put you to the test and like, look, kid, be here 4:30, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said yes. Like
no hesitation. Yeah.
I don't see people doing that right now. And I'm just at this point in my life too, where I'm like losing all my money. And when the opportunity to invest and somebody asks me like, do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And I feel like I've been thinking about that more. And I feel like that's really an interesting characteristic or something, like when you have nothing, but you'll still invest. You had nothing, but you were able, you can either trade your time or pay for it. And she said, she challenged you and said, well, you got to pay your time. That's hard. Getting about 4:30 when you're in college, like that is not easy. Cause I know when I was in college, I was built, even if I tried and I was somewhat disciplined, like, man, that would be challenging. And then you got to work out at a high level intensity.
Yeah. I mean, those are all, it's at a time when you're definitely more resilient. Your hormones are doing, different things. You're recovering at a different level. And there's also like the you don't know what you don't know. So you're just grinding and, kind of the I'll sleep when I'm dead attitude, which doesn't play well over time. The thing that was also going on there was to make extra money. I was actually working in the bar business. I was a bouncer at this big nightclub or whatever. And so there were days when I would open the gym I ultimately started working at the gym, right? And then I was opening the gym at 4:30 in the morning, but I was shutting the bar down the night before at 2 a.m., which, that was for a few nights a week. That did not play, that takes its toll and did not play well for very long. But yeah, man, different time, right? But I was always driven, like, it's hard. I don't know what, okay, might be harder for some people, but for me, it was like, this is what we're doing, is what I signed up for. And I think that the athletics, the being, focusing on the academics, my parents and wanting to make them proud and not disappoint them and things like that. And the hard work that they showed me as hard, blue collar workers. Like I said, my dad was an engineer, but in a different kind of engineer. They really showed me, like what work really is. So I didn't have like a weird connection to it. It was like, she tells me to be here at 4:30. Okay, coach, I'll be there at 4:30. Tell me what to do.
Yeah, but just something that I want to highlight, because it's something that I've noticed around a lot of great people that have been around, and just even groups as a trainer. When I was used to train law enforcement, there was a difference between people with a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and people that could take feedback. It was just so interesting to see high performers. They would take the feedback and, oh yeah, okay, I'll use that. Thanks for telling me that. And then there's others in the fixed mindset. You tell them it's just feedback, and if they took it the wrong way, they didn't use that feedback correctly, and they would just blame and criticize. But you, again, I see people that I see win in the game of life over and over again have this growth mindset. Was that just something that was always kind of a part of you? Or maybe like you just said, with your parents and everybody? Yeah,
I think it was ingrained. But yeah, I think it's the way you take the feedback or you consider the feedback. So going back to the coaching, or like even my parents for that matter, coaching that they were continually doing with me as parents. I have some great coaches, by the way, as my parents. The way I looked at it was, if my coaches weren't talking to me, there was a problem. Like I wasn't doing a good job. So if a coach did take time out to give me some constructive feedback or criticism, maybe that even meant a tongue lashing for messing up on something we had already talked about, we had already walked through, we'd already done all this stuff, and you messed it up. Like, I didn't take that as a bad thing. I took that as like, oh, okay, I messed up. This dude's trying to make me better. This feedback is here for my benefit. This isn't happening to me. This is happening for me. People have probably heard that before, or maybe not. Like, I should take advantage of this opportunity that I have right now to do this. And that might sound really cheesy or like off the wall. Yeah, whatever, dude. When the coach is yelling and spitting in your face, like you really look, man, were there times where I was frustrated? Yeah, but I never wanted to quit. Like I never wanted to quit based on that. There were other things I think that maybe drove me wanting to quit, but not that. Like the drive to work hard, I think is just kind of always been there. And again, hard is relative for everybody, but yeah, I think it's just kind of been there as long as I can remember. I don't know any different.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. What when you think about just that time in your life, was there anything that you would take away, or that you would say like, man, what was the biggest thing you took away from working with that coach, with that IFBB pro? Was there anything that you just walked away like, man, like, thank God for her, because she taught me this?
Yeah, probably several things, but I think for her, she had a tremendous amount of patience, and I think she was one of those people that didn't have to say very much to really get the point across. It was kind of do more with less, and let's just walk through this together. Be patient with the process and the information that was coming across. And I don't think I practiced that right away, but it's something, looking back, the people that I think have had the most influence in my life, whether it be from business, athletics, relationships, whatever you want to, whatever genre we kind of look at there, they practice a certain level of patience in terms of the information giving, and let people figure shit out on their own. And that certainly started with my parents. I mean, they would, and I keep bringing them up because they have been so influential. And I think that's a big problem with today's, youth, is that they don't have, or did not have, maybe great coaches growing up, single parent families and whatnot. Like that's not something I knew as a kid. So I always reflect back to that and go, remember the benefits that I had. But that being said, my parents let me make my own decisions. They also made me live with my decisions. And so her at that particular point, this was a time where there weren't games to go to. There wasn't any, but this was a 24/7 thing, this bodybuilding thing. It wasn't like train for a couple hours, go to practice for a couple hours, show up on Fridays and Saturdays, play the game, you live and die as a team. You're doing this all by yourself. So you got nobody. It was much like wrestling.
That's a lonely game.
That's fucking lonely. And when you lose on your own. Like you're out there all by yourself. You're staring at the lights or whatever else, at the top of the gymnasium or whatever. You walk off the mat. You have to take inventory. And I think when people take a certain level of patience with you, helping you to find what that inventory is for yourself, I think it can be extraordinarily valuable. And I think that's what she did for me. It's like, there were no excuses. There was just like, no, we start at 4:30. This is what we're doing. This many reps and sets we're doing today. Like these were your calories. That sounds very maybe like from a reductionist perspective, but I think it was super valuable for me.
Yeah, just that level, I think, of discipline too. I mean, when you look at people that are counting their macros and their food, and they're getting up at 4:30, you build this muscle of discipline, and that transcends into your business, to your marriage, to everything, to how you raise your kids. And so I just think that is like a keystone or habit, or some foundational habit. And you probably didn't know it at the time, but you do now, because I mean, you just live and walk and breathe that.
Yeah, that's I think that's the end of that. There's that people that have and practice a tremendous amount of discipline don't ever think about the word discipline. It's in there. Yeah. And yes. So that got driven in even that much more, reinforced for me. Going back to like the positives that come from discipline, right? The results that you get from discipline. It doesn't always guarantee the result that you want, but it's going to guarantee you a result, and you're probably moving in the right direction. And at least you have something to go back and examine if you find that you're not. So what could I be changing about this daily discipline, or the weekly, monthly, annual, whatever discipline? Yeah.
One last question. I'm just thinking about when you talked about just being an athlete and then that all just going away. I've seen that. I know you have too. I've coached prior athletes that they were amazing because they had that structure. They were told to get up at this time. They were told to eat this much. When that went away, it's like they just kind of fall apart. I'm curious, what do you tell these guys that come to you that either want to lose weight or they got an injury? That's another one I see. They get an injury and they're used to being on the top of their game, and now that injury has forced them to, no, you can't move your leg because you're injured. But then they want to make this comeback, or they want to get back in shape. Like, you've been there. I'm curious, like, what do you tell them or to get them back? Like, let's get this discipline going. Let's bring this back. Cause I've seen that a lot with former collegiate athletes.
Yeah. I think, being faced with adversity like that for somebody who's got almost their entire identity wrapped up in, whatever this is, their position, their team, their sport, their whatever, or, wherever maybe they're not an athlete in life and they're overweight, unhealthy, out of shape, all of these things. And that is their identity now. And so I think the where it all starts is gaining a high level of awareness of who it is that you're talking to, and spending time kind of figuring out where are they right now, where have they been, but where are they right now, and meeting them there. So sometimes that means a little bit of a reality check, and sometimes that reality for that athlete, let's just say if we're talking about that, or client or whoever, the reality check is painting a really clear picture of what now looks like. Where are we? And then if we can see eye to eye on that, and this is not me telling you where you are, this is you telling me where you are, and maybe me just kind of, I guess, maybe clearing up the edges of what might be a little bit unclear in the lane that you might be in. Maybe I'm not articulating that right, but just like, hey, let's maybe be really clear about what we're talking about here and where you are. Then taking time to really educate them on what it's going to take based on where they've been and where they are now. And that you can only do that if you've spent time as a coach really taking stock of where they are. And again, that's not telling them, that's asking them to walk through the process. So that, I think it takes a high level of self-awareness of the client, and a high level of awareness of that by the coach. And then it's educating them about, talking them through what the solution could be realistically, maybe providing well, here's 3 things that may happen, right? We may get your goal, and this might happen in this amount of time, and everything's going to be great. There might be this where we struggle a little bit for a while, but ultimately we're getting better. And then could be this other thing where, you're going to be struggling a lot, and a lot of suffering needs to happen before you come to the other side. But explaining to them that, as well as whatever the solution is, provided, and within that solution, providing them some, whether it's analytics, depending on the person that you're talking to, whether it's emotional support that they might need. And more importantly, with that, as you're doing all those things, at the end, getting their agreement and getting their buy-in to whatever that program or that structure, needs to be. And so, and once you've done that and you provided that to them, then asking them and getting permission to help them. Because I think if you've covered those bases, you're leaving yourself, you've covered all the bases, and you have someplace to come back to when you're having a bad day, when the client's having a bad day, because those bad days are going to happen, and letting them know that that's going to happen ahead of time, and go, hey, I want you to remember in 3 months from now, or 3 weeks, or 3 days from now, when you're hurting and everything sucks, or you just don't want to do it, I want you to remember this conversation, because I'm going to bring it back up again, and really being transparent about that, and then doing that in a caring and, productive way when it does happen. I think those are the things I try to tell people before we've even got started, just like, hey, or get to a baseline before we've even got started.
I love it. It's the expectations you give them. Mm-hmm. And then you talked about identity. I think that's just so huge. It's like when you change I tell clients that all the time, when you change your identity, when your identity becomes I am health or I am fitness, it's over. It's a wrap, because your habits, that is your habits. It would be out of the ordinary for you not to go to the gym. Yep. It would be out of the ordinary for you not to eat healthy.
Right.
Because you bring that back to the forefront to them. This is your mission. This is your vision. This is your identity. Boom. Love that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, those are the things people can really latch onto. It's not going to be a number on a scale that's going to motivate them to get up out of bed every day or whatever. It's that very thing. Am I doing the right thing for me right now? Does this really support all the things that you just lined out?
I heard another coach, I can't remember who this was, and he said the most important thing when it comes to fitness, and when you're kind of what you're talking about, these big goals, is when you're having a bad day, those are the days that he doesn't miss a workout because he knows, like, even on his worst days, when I was having a bad day, I still showed up. And then guess what? The workout can be trash, but psychologically, he like mentally just reinforced, like, even when I have my worst days, like, I don't miss it.
Yeah,
Back to identity.
What do they say? Like 80% of winning is showing up. You know,
Yeah.
Just you got to show up. How you show up is important, but showing up, you got to show up first before there's a how. You know, so yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Love it. Okay, so then now you get out of college, you start training people. You've got some clients. What happens? What happens then?
Yeah, so things accelerated for me pretty quickly. I was successful, and I was, you know,
Darn.
Yeah, and I liked that. I liked winning, and you know, going back to the other stuff in the past, like I hate losing more than I like winning, so I'm going to lose. So, and I believe, you know, I had some mentorship there to handle things in the right way. I wasn't being propped up, you know, as being better than I was or anything like that. I had to work, I had to grind, and I didn't mind doing it because at the end of the day, like I liked the way it felt. I liked the money I was making, which at the time really wasn't that much money, but it was way more than I had. And I got to go to work in gym clothes every day and, you know, work out, and, you know, there's pros and cons to all that. But, you know, as things escalated for me, and I had some experience, some leadership experience before, both in life, right? In my earlier years, Boy Scouts and sports and, you know, just some of the activities that we were involved in as kids. And that started to translate for me into the professional life, which is, and when we think about gyms, most people don't think about it as being a job, right? It's like more of a hobby. And a lot of people try to turn their hobbies into jobs, which I think is very dangerous. That includes gym owners. See a lot of gym owners like, oh, I love working out and I got a lot of money, you know, and I want to start a gym. This seems great. Like this, look at all, this is a great environment. They don't recognize how tough that business can be, and that it is a business at the end of the day. And that, you know, there are frameworks, there are structures, and I loved finding that because I remember I'd been missing that for so long, and I was able to help people, which I really found that I really liked doing outside of just training them for their fitness and health goals, right? I was helping other coaches and even managers of clubs be able to build their income base, right? Which it benefited everybody, right? The gym owners loved me because, you know, the revenue was going up, right? And the manager loved me because their bonuses were going up, and the trainer loved me because they were getting more clients, they were making more money and impacting more people. And so I started to find myself in like management roles, and ultimately I got hired by a company that was going gangbusters at the time. It's called Bally Total Fitness. A lot of people remember them. Yeah. They've been around for a long time. And their model at that point, while companies like 24 Hour Fitness were going up and buying up property and building brand new beautiful clubs, Bally already had like 300 clubs at that point, and they were not going to be able to go out and build as fast, and they weren't positioned that well, but they had a lot of clubs already. Their game was, we're going to go out and buy existing clubs that are out there, and we're going to try to dominate the marketplaces there and move in that way. And so there was a lot of opportunity at that company at the time, and I got hired in as I applied over in the Central Valley of California. They just bought 5 clubs over there. They acquired them from another owner, and they'd only been there about a year, and I had to make a transition. I had my girlfriend, who later became my wife at the time, was just graduating from school. We needed to make a decision where we're going to stay local where we were, or were we going to move. Well, she had roots in the Central Valley, so I applied over there, and the next thing you know, I'm a manager. I applied as a coach, with intentions actually of not being there very long. I was going to go in there, build my business, and then bail out and start my own business as a coach, have like a studio, because cost of living and the affordability to do that was much easier. Yeah, that was my intention. So I applied. They go, hey man, you got a lot more experience than a lot of our coaches here do. Would you like to manage a club? And I go, well, how much does that cost, or how much does that pay? And you know, they told me, I said, fucking, I'll take it, you know? So I went over there, and I was managing training departments. That's really why I was brought in, was to build up the personal training program, which was really sort of non-existent. I was successful. And because I was successful at that, they asked me to do it at another club, and then another club, and then another club. I spent a 10-year career with them, And over that time, at the end of that 10 years, I was a national director of personal training for Bally. And so I went from training clients to, managing trainers to then, there was 450 clubs nationwide, thousands of trainers, millions and millions of dollars in revenue every month and every year, and planes, trains, and automobiles, and traveling all over the country. And it was a cool ride. I had a good time.
Sounds like an amazing life. Like, I mean, just keep, hey, you did that, plug and play. Let's just keep doing this and right off to the sunset. But I
life
guess
doesn't work like that.
No,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So then what took place? I mean, especially when you're doing so well, right? And I just find it so amazing too. 10 years you're doing this again, and we talk about like careers and, oh yeah, I'm going to do this till I'm 50 and then retire. And then I get my good life and I have a white picket fence and all these things.
All of that. Yeah.
And you probably could have done that. And I'm sure you would have been great at it. But, yeah, but then what changed for you then after 10 years of devoting your life to this?
Yeah, there's multiple factors. I mean, I'd had such a cool ride, and I really, like, along the way, a lot of things happened. There were company restructures, there were new leadership that came in. And again, I think grinding, discipline, being willing to take the extra work. I moved around a bit in different locations, regions in California to be able to do the things that I did. So I was willing to take moves, sacrifice. Along the way, there was a family, that got started, and there's finance that's there, and when things are good, and when they're not so good, you've got to figure it out, and you don't know what you don't know until you get there, and you have to work your way through it. But again, I'd mentioned the leadership changes. There was we were coming in on, in 2007, 2008, a lot of things were happening with the economy here, but I'd already sort of witnessed a little bit of that prior with Bally. And so when I saw some financial things happening, I learned some things early, and that was this. When I started working for the company in 2000, right there in 2000, they were a publicly traded company. And the stock price at that point was like $36 a stock or a share. Sorry, it's pretty good, but it was let's say way overinflated. And around that time, for you old folks out there like me, there was this little thing. There's little companies called WorldCom and Enron, and they got hemmed up because they basically were cooking the books, and that started a lot of stuff at the FCC. And the Trade Commission, and they started going to companies and started examining things a little bit differently, and they're going, whoa. So they came to Bally's and they said, hey, listen, you can't report your earnings this way anymore. And they were doing that to a lot of companies at the time. And what ended up happening was all the bad debt was being exposed. And there was a lot of it because this company had started in the 60s, and they basically had all these memberships on the books, and the way they projected income, what was really coming in, and it was all bullshit. And so we immediately watched the stock go from like $36 to like $20, or it was like 28, then it was like 20, then it was like 16, then it was like 12. When it got to, and by the way, I had stock options with the company. It was part of the employment package, which was pretty cool. I had a 401k and all that stuff. This was a long time ago, but those were cool things to have. Well, I watched that all happen, and while that's happening, obviously that impacts things down the line. And I watched how the purse strings got tightened, how management structures got changed, how basically there was a downsizing happen, and the people that survived the downsizing and the pay cuts, or even the just being laid off, were the people that were grinders, right? That had made themselves more marketable, could multitask and do different things, wear multiple hats, had good relationships with both their peers, but also their subordinates as their employees, and the higher ups. They were good communicators, and I had survived all that. So I'd learned a lot of things. Well, in comes 2007, 2008, the housing market thing happens. Well, the company had already been in a good deal of financial trouble and just kept getting into more debt, trying to keep the thing floating. And a new leadership team came in. I did not have the energy for another change. Plus, effectively, they were going to be running the company through a bankruptcy. Well, I hung on for about a year, but at this point, like going back, houses and all that stuff, like I had this lifestyle. I was balling, man. I had boats and trucks and, houses and things like that. And all of a sudden, like I just took a 30% haircut, overnight with my income. my potential income was going to be much lower. Like they'd be like, oh, but this is what your potential earnings are. I'm like, don't fucking tell me what I could potentially earn. Tell me what it's going to be. Like, what am I going to earn? And that quickly became reality. And ultimately I was like, I can't stay here anymore. And so I decided like to do the thing that I always wanted to do, which was ultimately have my own business. Open your own business, Scott. That'll be great.
Great
be
for
your
taxes.
Own, Be your own boss.
Your own boss.
It'll be great for taxes.
Yeah.
All this stuff. But because of all these things financially, over that course of those years, I really had nothing left. Like I was over leveraged, overextended. And so I didn't have a lot of savings. In fact, I didn't have much at all. And so this was going to be tough, and I was going to have to start small, but I was okay with that. I was like, basically I'm going to have to start back at the beginning and become a trainer again. And that's what I did. I started Red Dot Fitness. It was just me. I rented space from somebody that had worked for me previously, actually, as a coach, and walked in with 0 clients, and started the journey here at Red Dot.
So amazing too. I just think your journey throughout your fitness and just even education is you were never one dimensional. And what I mean is you weren't just some bodybuilder or just a fitness guy. I think you were always asking questions, and that made you so dynamic in business, sports, everything. And you just kept asking why and asking you're always solving new problems. And so it's no surprise to me listening to your story that as a guy like you, when it all came crashing down, you're like, oh, I got to reinvent myself. But I know how to do it because I got all these other skills. Well, I'm sure a lot of people just plummeted. They just failed. And so it's just really interesting, again, to just see the dynamics of what it takes to be successful. It's no surprise, that you were successful.
Yeah, I think part of it is just counting on yourself and believing in yourself I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I know what the outcome will be if I stay here. Like if I keep doing the same shit over and over and expecting a different outcome, that is what they call the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't do that because all the things said this was a bad idea, right? I mean, it was bad for my health. It was bad for my finance. It was bad for my family. All that stuff was bad. So I have to make a change. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I think so people get paralyzed by that fear of that indecision of, I can suffer here. I can do this. I'll make adjustments to continue to suffer. I just didn't want to do that anymore. I knew I needed to make adjustments, and I knew there was going to be some suffering, but I wanted to know that at the end of that, like there was a reason for doing that, and that I could come out the other side. And so I guess just like I did early on with the career path in the first place, I was like, I'm going to go all in on me.
Yeah.
Like, not somebody else, but on me. And I knew I didn't want to be in a position where somebody else was pulling the strings, the marionette strings. Like I'd been working in this company, and I'd already said, like, I did a really good job of managing the company, and managed myself through that time. But ultimately somebody else has you by the short hairs.
Yep.
They control your paycheck. They control what you are or you aren't going to do. On a whim, they can shut down 50 clubs. I had to do that. On a whim, they can give you that 30% haircut. I didn't want to be in that situation again.
Yeah. Talk about Red Dot Fitness. I love the name and just how you even came up with that name. And and then just kind of what was your vision? Talking about vision, what was your vision for the gym that you wanted to create, the dynamics based on everything you saw from the fitness industry? How was this going to be different and unique?
Great question. So the name came up, quick story. So while I was working for Bally and sort of on my way, I got heavily involved in endurance training, the exact opposite end of like bodybuilding, right? And power and strength athletes.
Cardio you don't do that. Come on.
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of cardio. I was doing triathlons, adventure racing, a lot of multi-sport stuff. And I got involved with this training group. As almost like a hobby, they were giving me like a discount at the triathlon store. So like if I'd gone in to buy, bike parts or running shoes, or triathlon is an expensive sport for people that don't know. It's not cheap. Like there's entry fees, there's equipment, there's all this stuff. So if you're doing that on a regular basis, you know what I'm talking about. And so this afforded me like a pretty deep discount and a network of people that I could contact for things. And also I was thinking about maybe creating a business at some point, and this being a major part of it. So I was kind of networking it with the future in mind.
Yeah.
So part of this was they would do training programs on the weekends, and they would have people out, and I was part of these training programs, and a few people there, particularly this one guy, thought I was probably being a little too intense. He was out there to have a good time. I was out there to help him win. And he said to me one day, he's like, Jesus, Scott, he was like, every time I come to one of your sessions, like I feel like I have a red dot on my forehead and you're about to blow my brains out. Like, can you just tone it down a little bit? Was effectively what he was saying to me. And I everybody laughs because he says this out loud in front of everybody. And, you know, as everybody's suffering together, you know, and I thought about it and I went, first off, that is exactly what I wanted you to get out of this, because I am totally laser focused on you guys getting what you need and want out of this. Now, this might suck, but at the end, it's going to help you be better. And that's just kind of how I approached everything. The second part of that was like, I kind of like that, like this red dot. And at the time, red dots were different than they are now. Red dot was literally like what you'd think on a laser that you might put on the end of your rifle or your pistol. We didn't have these closed and open emitter, you know, reticles, not like we have them now. They were much, much different back then. And not entirely, but different. And so that's where that came from. And I decided at that point, like when it comes time for me to put the business together, that's going to be the name. So that's where the name came from. And that a little bit, you know, kind of speaks to, and a lot of people didn't realize this at the time until much later, that firearms is a part of my life, like not a huge part, not like it is now, but it's something I gravitated towards. I like to train. I like to be out there and train outside on the range or whatever. And so it was fitting, but it was also not like so in your face that, you know, people would be completely turned off about it. Maybe not like they are these days in the last couple of years.
Right. Why are you such a patriot? That's terrible.
Yeah. I know. I'm a sinner. So anyhow, that's where the name came from. It really started with, again, my last couple of years with in my corporate job. Like I had time to think, and I kind of alluded to, you know, I was working with this triathlon group. I grabbed a couple of journals. Well, I started with a journal. I started journaling down all the things that I wanted to do, basically writing a business plan is what I was doing. And then that journal filled up and I started a second journal. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was commuting across the country. I had all the southwestern and eastern seaboard of the U.S., everything from Georgia, North Carolina, Georgia, you know, down into Texas, Florida. Like there were a lot of clubs down there. So I was just flying all over the place and doing stuff. And the point of that was I had a lot of time and I had so much exposure to all these different regions and all these different training programs and all these different people. The vision for me was just to create a space that was really about coaching and it was going to suit individuals' needs. And it was really completely centered on that versus a company's need. And I really felt like I had this philosophy that if you really focused on the people, that the company would get taken care of, as so long as you had a solid structure and plan and frameworks in order to do that. And so I started to develop this business where, you know, effectively what I wanted people to be able to do is come in and like, I don't care what your particular need or want is from a fitness goal perspective and even like a limitations perspective. I wanted to have a staff, a facility that could handle anything that walked through the door, knowing that, you know, there's certain things that we're going to have to maybe refer out. So I wanted to have a network of professionals that I was able to work with that we could cross-pollinate businesses with and things like that. And I'd seen people try to do kind of like the all-in-one, one-stop shop. Like you got your chiropractor, you got your, you know, your physical therapist, you got your personal trainers, and those never work. They're never, you got all these different pieces of paper hanging on the wall. You have all these different agendas, and it's effectively, I guess, like all these independent contractors working in one space, but with high level degrees, and you know they're dealing with insurances and things like. Just got really messy, and I never saw it worked out. So I wanted to be like this in between that was like this hub that would get people to people like that if they needed that stuff, but also be able to benefit by learning from them. Like, what could we do before we have to even go there? So if they go to there, they're getting very specialized stuff, because the stuff that I was watching come into the gyms was coming from people like that. Let's just say a physical therapist. And I was like, they had you do this in physical therapy? Like, wow. How long did you go there for? I was there for like 8 sessions. I went over like a 4-week time. And how do you feel? I don't feel better at all. Like the swelling's down, but that's because I had an acute injury or whatever else. I was like, man, there's an answer here, and I wanted to be that answer. And so that's really what the vision was for Red Dot. And the way that was envisioned was to have employees, not independent contractors, to work from similar philosophy and methodology, and really rooted in science, right? Not rooted in fads, and be able to provide different levels to different people, because they all need different things. But again, keep the continuity and the integrity of how we were doing that very similar, so that you could benefit by all the coaches in the club, or all the expertise that were being brought to the table. And so what Red Dot effectively is that now. And so it's everything from personalized one-on-one fitness coaching, to semi-private fitness coaching, to very specialized nutrition coaching, lifestyle coaching. We have group training that goes on here. We have an open gym format for anybody that's involved in one of those programs to come in. And we love hosting, other professional organizations. They'll look us up. We just had one here. Pain Free Performance Specialist just came through here last month. We'll have, to where other professionals come in and get educated. Just want it to be, like I said, I guess that the term would be a hub to really help people get better. And there's money to be made in it. And so far it's worked out. You take care of the people, the business gets taken care of, as long as you have a strong business model in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good leader. Honestly, I mean, I would say that for you. Leadership is always at the forefront. And one of those quotes that I love, that Jocko, I think it was Jocko who said, there are no bad teams, they're just bad leaders.
Yeah.
And you got to have a strong leader in the forefront.
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment, and it is all about the people. I wouldn't be here without the people, that are surrounded by us. My partner CC, for which I would not have any success that I have right now at this level, at this stage in the game, without her. All the other people that are players in the game, they all matter. It's all important. The decisions they make on a daily basis impact not just their clients, but everybody else, including those outside, network colleagues, allied health professionals that we work with. Like, so there's a responsibility that everybody plays in that. And so, and they're all their own leaders in their own right.
Yeah. Love that. You said earlier, you love winning.
Yeah.
Well, then this thing called the pandemic hit, and the government and everybody wanted you to lose, actually. And they actually shut down gyms. I'm just so impressed by you that you're still here. You're still standing.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was the conversation going on in your head when that took place? And how did you stay alive and stay here?
Yeah. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you in your career as a law enforcement officer, or, maybe on the mats, in martial arts or whatever. But if you've ever been kicked in the balls,
I was telling, by the way, really quick, I was telling Eli, your videographer, that I used to do Kaju Kembo. That was my primary martial art. I did that for 8 years. Well, Kaju Kembo, they are known for breaking a lot of things, but everything is a groin strike. So we had to wear cups. So yeah, I would get hit in the balls actually pretty regularly.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel good. And when that happens. And so getting kicked in the balls and then getting repeatedly punched in the face is pretty much how I would describe that. Now, that said, I've been kicked in the balls before, and I've been punched in the face before, and I think that's largely why Red Dot Fitness still exists after the pandemic. The getting kicked in the balls part really is, like, I think might be what I'm about to say might strike people as a little different. For me, what that meant is that the fitness industry was the first place people went, or the government went, as the problem. And while, again, I recognize there's a lot going on, and I'll even recognize this again through my experience with leadership. One of the things I'm acutely, attuned to at this point is knowing when the job's too fucking big for you. And what I see with our leadership here, particularly, I'll keep it local, in our city, in our state, particularly, and now glaringly at the federal level, is that the job is way too big for the fucking people that are doing it. And so I'll put that aside for a second. So coming back, not even being consulted, but more than that, being dismissed and insulted as these guys are a problem. And to be paint a very clear picture, there were two business models in the state of California that got hammered the most. One of them was the fitness business, and the second one were salons. Somehow we became the pariah. We were the reason the quote unquote numbers were going up, the infection rates were going up. Shut down the gyms. I'm like, pardon me, because this is going to be the third time in less than a minute I'm going to say this word, but motherfucker, you already shut us down. We've been shut down. So now you're saying we're the problem. We're not even open. My doors were closed for a year here. 1 year. There was a lock.
Still paying rent,
still paying rent. And by the way, a lot of people couldn't. And part of this is having relationships and knowing how to negotiate and being a good business manager, talking with the landlords, the property owner, and trying to work out the best. Thank God they were on our team, and largely due to how we started our relationship, making sure we were all working towards one another's best interest and being professional and not pretending to. We're playing business here. We were doing business here. But yeah, you got 6,000 square feet of facility that you can't put anybody in, and your business is dependent on that to a high level. I mean, yes, you can provide health and fitness services outside of the four walls of your facility, but you just mentioned the paying rent. That's a big one.
You're in Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay. Dude, yeah. Yeah. So that got silly real fast, right? And so that was part of it. The other part was the getting punched in the face repeatedly is, well, the health department here is just one block over. And from our business, we were continually being harassed. We'd been ticketed for things we weren't doing, by the way, winding up being doxxed on in news stories and things for again, things we didn't do being brought up as a problem. We weren't open. We were not open. And a lot of places were in our gyms. A lot of places were doing things inside the back door. I don't blame them.
Yeah.
And if we could have gotten away with that, I would have. And when I say gotten away with it, they were literally sheriffs showing up, with the health department minions, by the way, because they were just hiring people off the street and giving them basically a quote unquote badge and authority. And you can imagine how that went down.
Oh yeah.
So we were really trying to play ball and do things the right way. By the way, so going to the other part of this is you mentioned in the Silicon Valley. This is like a bubble within the bubble with regard to how the viewpoints on the pandemic, the viewpoints on the vaccines, the viewpoints on businesses being shut down. And here, most people work for tech or some support company or, third party that works with tech. And so one of the challenges with that is those people don't actually have to go to a place of work, right? They can work from home.
Yep.
But outside of that, okay, it's a little bit annoying. I can't go out to get groceries and not feel safe, or, there's some supply shortage issues there. I'm just gonna put it this way. Your life at best was mildly inconvenienced. My fucking business was shut down. Like you can continue to do your things,
yep,
the way you need to do your things. You have to figure out now how to do it from home. Again, it's inconvenienced. You didn't cut businesses off, their employees off. And by the way, the members and clients that need this for their health and fitness off at the knees. So there was I want to say a much different perspective on how things should have been getting handled. Now, keep in mind, these Silicon people our Valley people are also our clients. So us trying to push back and go, no, fuck you, we're keeping our doors open, would have just buried us even further.
Yeah.
They would have been, hey, this is wrong. You can't do this. It's masks and vaccines or nothing at all. And you have to respect that as a business owner going, I might have different viewpoints, but these are my clients. And by the way, I didn't bring them on as clients, and they didn't bring me on. They didn't bring me on as their quote unquote allied healthcare provider because of our political viewpoints, right? That never came up. We have a rule here: no religion, no politics.
They thought you were the best to solve their problem. That's it.
And we did our very best at every level and beyond in order to service them in the way that they needed to be in order to solve their problem. And now we're faced with this. So me, again, putting my middle finger up, that would have we would have completely lost.
Yeah.
Well, we ended up losing about 85% of our clients anyway for various and sundry reasons. most of which moved out of the area, a lot of which are still scared to death to even come back to a gym. Again, bubble within the bubble. But we went outside. We rented a parking lot. You know, we had an outside gym for a while. It was miserable during the winter months, summer and winter months. We were burglarized, vandalized multiple times. We're dealing with all of that. We're trying to pivot, trying to figure out ways to make revenue, live streaming things, and creating online programs, and trying to provide our services online. God bless our coaches and our staff for hanging in there with us. For the clients that did and could, because not everybody could. A lot of people lost their jobs. Again, losing clients is because they lose their jobs, and they're like, are they financially strapped? So, dude, I mean, it was just like every day, it was something different. And it wasn't positive. Somebody needs to cancel. Somebody wants to be pissed off at you because there was less than 6 feet of distance between somebody doing a squat and somebody doing an arm curl in the outdoor gym or something like that. It was just kind of all of these things piling up on a daily basis. It wasn't a very positive time, man. I can tell you that.
I'm just thinking too, and I always like to tell this because during the pandemic, I remember July of 2020, I flew to Idaho, an hour flight from San Francisco to Idaho. That's about it. And like you said, I always describe San Francisco, this area in California, the Bay Area, as a bubble of fear, the mecca of fear.
It's different.
It's just so crazy when you're here, the media and just how we are being brainwashed. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's the truth. We are being hypnotized. If you study how hypnosis works, that is what they're doing. So anyways, when I flew to Idaho, man, what's this? The parks are open. My kids can play at a park. It's not shut down. It was a different world. And I just thought that was so fascinating how much the media can control stuff. The people in San Francisco or San Jose, they have no idea. Do you know people in Idaho right now are not dying, by the way, and are just living their lives?
So glad.
Guys, by like an hour away. And I promise you, they're not any more immune than you. They're not any more special. It's just, they don't know, but if you don't know what you don't know if you're just in your bubble. And you just listening to the news. And there's a lot of dirty stuff too, I can say, because I have a friend that worked for SFGH, the San Francisco General Hospital, one of the biggest, again, trauma units. Again, I said, hey, are you guys, they said the news is saying you guys are at full capacity. I'm getting alerts on my phone saying you're at full capacity. She shows me a screenshot. She goes, Joel, we're not at full capacity.
By the way, this is what it would look like in any other given day and time. Anyway, like that was what people didn't want to, or didn't know, and they didn't want to be talked about. It was like, this is no different than it is any other time.
Correct.
Because we're already understaffed. There's already too many sick people in the world. Like there's no different anyways.
When you talk about it, like I said, if we were to talk about anybody that actually drives and gets in car accidents, you would never get in your car if you knew how many people are dying right now from car. It's more than COVID, right. But it's just because we're talking about it. And so people don't realize that. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I think the one of the things, there was a lot of negative that was going on, and you know how you choose to deal with the negative. There's different ways. Sometimes you have to face it head on, right? Sometimes you want to be distracted. Other times there's maybe a little bit more of a meditation about it, if you will, and thought process, like, how am I going to deal with this? Let me analyze this. Is this really negative, or am I just perceiving it that way? All that kind of stuff. But one of the things we had to do was we had to get the hell out of here. Like I needed to be away and in a different environment. And we had lots of time to do that because we were operating basically on a skeleton crew in a very skeleton type of way. And again, our doors were closed. So minus the outside gym, which, didn't need staff, including me, to be there to run it, left Cece and I room to go travel. And so going back to what you said, I mean, Idaho is one of those places we went to, Nevada, all over California. And I'll just leave it. We can stay within our state. Just get outside, the major metropolitan areas of Los Angeles County, Alameda County, San Francisco proper, Silicon, or, Santa Clara, the Bay Area. And you realize the same things you just said about Idaho. I traveled all over the country. It was awesome. And the way the pandemic was being handled in other places, there was an awareness to it, but the level of intensity with how people were dealing with it was so much different. And it was really relieving to me. And I'm very appreciative of that time, because it would give me a different perspective that I wasn't getting. So I realized how I was being like just enveloped in this shit all the time while I was here, and that getting out really recharged the batteries. But I have to tell you, like, well, these were mostly road trips. I wasn't flying anywhere. Coming back into town, like from these trips, like was immediate. Like within minutes, you just like the blood pressure goes up, like the anxiety level goes up, and that was really tough to deal with, man. Like I fucking hate it here. Like, Jesus, people, come on now. Now, I don't want to look, if you're fearful, I don't want to be judgmental of you being afraid of something. But I was having a tough time. I was having a tough time with that. Like, this is based on what you're saying, like, you're getting this information in this way. And I don't want to say it, but we're going to know a lot more in a year, 2 years, and it's all coming out now. I think it took a little longer for a lot of reasons. It's all coming out now, and I'm like, fuck, I fucking told you so. And look at all this stuff we had to go through, and how much misery, you put yourself through, all that anxiety, all that fear. Was it really worth it? And I think the answer, obviously, for a lot of people is probably no. But at the same time, what was the true cost? And for us, to your point, and circling back, we were able to make it through. The gym still stands. We're still doing our thing, but not at a major cost to a lot of things here, including culture, revenue, and the way we operate our business. It's much different than it was. That is for sure. Fundamentally, it's still the same, but the day-to-day is different.
I want to just highlight, because I'm still a little unsure, but I do want to highlight, and I want to come back and just answer this question of like, how did you win? But I want, before we go there, I'm a student of history. I love learning just like you. And I think that's why, like you said, I get a little riled up too. I try to really subordinate my ego and just calm myself down, because I know it doesn't matter. But because it's really just me wanting people to see my, like, don't you see this? Right. So I realized there's no reason for that. Like, and I have compassion. If you're really that scared, I have compassion. I think for me, I want to say, like, would you be willing to accept possibly something else? Because I think for me, it's just really hard to understand. I'm just trying to understand people. I just came back after being gone from San Francisco for a year, and I just got back, and I'm seeing multiple people, way more than I see in Idaho, wearing masks. And I really want to ask them, like, you're probably multiple boosted and all that kind of stuff, and yet you're still wearing it. Please tell me why. So I think if I want people to, like, just step outside and ask yourself some logical questions, guys. But back to history, it's really interesting. If you know history, it can be very powerful. Of course, we know this. But if you go back, 1906, I believe it was the 1906, the Great Plague, right? It was 1906. That's the earthquake.
Spanish flu?
1918, Spanish flu, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of interesting things to be learned from that. But one of the things is, they were talking about there's newspaper articles talking about how masks didn't work. So it's really just interesting. You wouldn't know that unless you're a student of the game.
Yeah, if you're learning, you're just being inundated with information. And I think already historically, if we go back and we kind of let's look at the last 20, 30 years about how that term's been used a lot here. I just think society, particularly Western culture, has protected people, from starting with the parents and not having to go through hard things, or protecting their kids from having to go through hard things, and critical thinking and decision making and suffering. We don't want anybody to suffer. We don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. We don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt. Like, let's just be inclusive. Let's make sure everybody's, feels like they're part of the whole. That's not reality. It's never reality. Like, there's going to be some division. There's going to be some feelings hurt. There's going to be some challenges, whatever else. So
if you do what everybody else is doing, that is called mediocrity.
It's at best, right? At best. And so the other part that comes along with that is, I think, the tolerance piece, right? Because once you start there, it comes up like, we got to be more tolerant of this. We have to be more tolerant of that. This deserves another look. We need to be tolerant. Well, the problem is, once you become so tolerant, what by default that makes you intolerant, because now anybody that wants to challenge that thing, whatever it is, you can't be tolerant of, because that would mean that they're intolerant. Because they're intolerant, you're not tolerant. It's a circle of ridiculousness. So the coming back to the people asking themselves questions and how they get to where they're at. I don't think they had to do that a lot going into this. So I think they lacked the bandwidth from the get-go When I say they, I just mean a large part of our population. And this is a lot of levels. They lack the bandwidth to critically think through this. And the fear was part of that, is not knowing how to deal with that fear.
Yeah.
And
that's an amazing drug.
It is crazy,
Wow.
right? So it's like the opposite of sex, right? Like, I want to stay as far away from that as I can, but I want to get as close to this as I can. There's like this weird dichotomy with the fear factor. But my point of this is they didn't have the bandwidth to deal with it, and then we just start piling on, and then they start seeing. You mentioned the term hypnotism. It becomes subconscious. Like, it just starts happening, and you're not recognizing what you're hearing and how you're hearing it. And that's not to say that the world's out to get you. I'm just saying, again, we heard a lot of things, and there's no denying that at this point, about vaccines and masks and what it was going to do and what it was not going to do, from doctors to the highest level of our federal government, coming from the Oval Office. Like, if you do this, then this is going to happen. And people that don't have the bandwidth or the ability to critical think, that need other people to answer questions for them or make decisions for them, they wind up caught in this vacuum of, well, I just have to do this. And they stop thinking. They stop trying to think about it. They don't know how to think about it, so they stop trying to think about it. And then you asking them, like, hey, why are you doing that? That is immediately met with an emotional response rather than a logical, critical thinking response. And I think that's where we're at now on a lot of things, whether it's
all emotional,
fucking vaccines or politics.
Yeah.
There's very little like, well, let me sit back and let's have an intelligent conversation about this right now. It's almost impossible because it's already highly charged.
Yeah. One last thing, because the emotional aspect about it. I was at a park where I got confronted because I wasn't wearing a mask, and my friend and I were both health coaches. We weren't wearing masks, and guys, what's the deal? Kind of came up on us. Well, I mean, would you be willing to have a conversation? I was like, there's a double-blind randomized controlled study out of Denmark showing they don't work. And we had a very polite conversation. And then my friend said, listen, he's way nicer than me. He goes, listen, why don't we just have like a cup of coffee? I think one day, like, I'd be happy to have a cup of coffee with you. And I think we could just get a lot more. Nothing's going to get solved here. The guy looked at us and just said, fuck you both. Mm-hmm. And he's like, just put your fucking mask. Actually, that's what he said. Just put your fucking mask on. That was his last response, and he walked off. Mm-hmm. And so what it reminded is, like, you came over here, you had no intention to actually have a conversation in here. You just wanted us, you didn't want to hear anything. You just wanted to tell us what to do, and it didn't work in your favor. We were very polite too. Just said, and he even said, I'd love to have a conversation outside of this. I think we would actually get along and we could talk to each other. And his response was that. So
listen, man, like, I've had a ton of those similar types of conversations, and it's not going the way you want, so you respond that way. Or the other way to look at this is, well, he didn't hear his opinion or his things coming out of your mouth, so that automatically went to that. So there is no way you're ever going to have a conversation with somebody like that. They don't want to, right?
Yeah.
And people have to want to have the conversation first before it can ever go that way. The challenge with that is because that continues to happen, and it has happened for a long time. This is my viewpoint on it is people stop having conversations. They don't want to have conversations anymore, and they start isolating themselves and or start drifting towards the faction that gives them agency. And this is human. This is in the human psyche, right? I'm going to go to where I feel comfortable, where I feel supported, or where I'm being validated, right? That's very human to want to do, but it's also very you devolve when you go that way, because you're not challenged in ways that makes you think outside of the box. And so once you're in that little echo chamber, that box, like, that's all that's going to happen. And I think there's obviously a divide.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yep. 100%. Okay. You started, I think during the pandemic too, you started this amazing podcast.
Yeah.
Iron Sights. Tell me why, because starting a podcast, most people, like, I've been doing mine for a little bit over 2 years. People that I've seen, the average podcast lasts about 7 episodes. I think it's 13 now. 13 episodes, and then they quit.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, people quit and I think the reason is they think they're going to get sponsorships. They're going to be like a millionaire. They're going to be so cool just connecting with everybody. And there's this like allure to it, right? That it's going to like be the ticket. And guess what? Nobody gives a fuck about your downloads. That nobody's watching the podcast. Nobody cares. You guys are really doing it at a high level. And I'm just curious, like, yeah, what was the impetus, the reason for starting it? And then just really, I mean, here we are in this amazing studio in San Jose, and just you guys are doing it at the highest level. So it's just really cool to see.
Well, thank you for the compliments. It probably not surprise you that we work really hard to try and turn out the best product we can. And we're very conscientious. And my boy Eli sitting over here with the, behind the cameras and behind the soundboard, we are very conscientious about making sure we do not turn out a product that would disappoint our listeners. And we're not always, super happy with everything that goes out. We're our own worst critics, or best, however you want to look at it, with that. So it takes a village. It takes a team. This is not a one-man show. That is for sure. So thank you for that. And I just want to acknowledge my boy over there. Thanks, Eli. So the podcast, so going back to pandemic, so 2020 was a really rough year. And by the way, we'd moved into this facility that we had. We'd been in it. We would been coming in on our 3 years, and with saving a long story, we were basically going to be recovering or recapturing. We were coming back. We'd been completely in the black. In 2020, the trajectory at that point was right where we expected it to be. We had done all the right things. We worked really hard. We were working on a nice, honest business, and everything short of a pandemic, anything short of a pandemic, would have prevented us from being uber successful here from a financial perspective. We already were successful in every other way, but money is important, right? Finance is important. We had plans. So coming into 2022, man, that was hard. I mean, again, kicked in the balls and then repeatedly punched in the face. So by the end of, as we started getting towards the end of 2020, I was pretty sore. Pretty sore. But also the things that were happening politically in the climate that was going on. We'll go back to the bubbles within the bubbles and those kind of things. In June of that year, we'd had the George Floyd incident that had happened, and I know at that point in your life, you were involved in some of that stuff and having to deal with it in a different career path. And so for us, it was really frustrating to kind of watch. I was seeing the whole thing play out on TV, like everybody else. I was angered, sad. There's a lot of rush of emotions, like how things had been handled. There were mistakes made, the way the media was portraying it, and I mean on both sides. Like it was wild to me. Again, it was just creating. And by the way, I lived through the Rodney King incident vividly. April 29th, 1992. I know exactly where I was sitting and watching all that stuff happen. And I remember going out to dinner with the day it kind of went down, the verdict was read. It took a little while for things to ramp up. The day the verdict was read, I remember my parents, we'd gotten home from school or whatever, me and my brother, and they'd taken us out to dinner at this little local restaurant that we'd always been to. It was a little chain restaurant, and they're like, hey, we're closing down. And we're like, what the fuck you mean? It's Thursday night or whatever it was. You're closing down. It's like, yeah, well, the riots are happening. Dude, we lived there was nothing happening around us, but there was enough awareness from a corporate perspective where they're like, hey, you should shut down because we don't know what's going to happen. And I remember going, this is weird. What the hell? Like, why would this thing that's in Los Angeles, California, impact us up here almost 400 miles away, or anywhere else for that matter?
Yep.
That didn't register with me. I was a high school kid or whatever. But I remember after that, and I remember sitting in front of the TV for days on end watching all the shit that went down. And very specifically in the Korean communities of Los Angeles, and the devastation that was happening down there for these local business owners and families, and how the police were just completely ill-equipped to deal with any of it. And I was getting some flashbacks watching what was kind of transpiring on the George Floyd side of things. Now flash forward 20 years later.
Yep.
And watching things happen, I'm on the couch with the kids and my partner. City Hall is only about 2 miles down the street from us. We're literally on the same street as City Hall. People are down there exercising their right to protest and freedoms of speech, which I highly respect. It's our most, if you start going down the list of, in our Constitution, we start going through the Bill of Rights and, on all the amendments that are in there. Freedom of speech is fucking important. It's what separates us from a lot of other places in the world, right?
Except on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Interesting how that one's been challenged. Here's my point. I'm watching on TV things get a little out of control. It goes beyond exercising your freedom of speech. Things start getting lit on fire. There's cars being pushed in the street getting lit on fire. There's dumpsters on fire. There's windows being broken. I'm starting to see same shit that's happening in a lot of other places, maybe not to the same extent. And there's no comparison downtown San Jose to downtown Oakland, downtown Kenosha, right? New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles. It's not the same. And so I'm not trying to compare that. But to me, it was literally in my front yard, and it was starting to work its way down the street because the law enforcement here handled it decisively, and my hat's off to them. I support them 100% for how they did it and what they did. But it started to get pushed into my neighborhood. And so I basically we'd been shut down. I felt somewhat victimized. I never live in that state. I never choose the role of victim, but that doesn't mean you can't be victimized. And I felt we had been victimized at some level, or a lot of levels, as a business, as a company, as, you know, and these were my friends, these were my family, these were my people. We had some shit taken away from us, and I was not going to watch our business get burned down, you know, because we'd worked hard to keep it afloat. And I was watching the stuff come work down the street, and I was like, oh, I ain't going to let that happen. I'm not going out without a fight. So at very least, I need to be a deterrent. So I live a couple blocks from the studio, or from the gym. Packed up some things, went down to the gym, and lived here for 3 days. And you asked me about the podcast, and I'm bringing this up because it's an important piece of the podcast. Part of the things that I gathered up were some force multipliers, including some firearms. And I sat in that window, and I just, again, tried to be visible as people were rolling by. And these were, you know, there were people out there that were legitimately exercising their rights, and there are other people out there that were up to no good. Yep. I did not just fall off the turnip truck. I'm not an idiot. And let's just say I had a lot of eye contact with a lot of less than savory individuals while sitting on the inside of my building, which is all glass, front out to the major boulevard, with the firearm sitting on the coffee table, which sits in our lobby with the big screen TV above that, as I'm kind of just watching all the things that are happening and trying to keep stock of, like, well, what is going on? You know, are things moving this way? And the point of that is I realized really fast, like, how ill-equipped not just myself was, but the community was for what they were being faced with at that time. It really brought some things forward for me in terms of how I need to approach my life, my sense of preparedness, my sense of self-reliance. Because what was I going to do? What was I going to do if somebody came through that door? Like,
I'm wondering the same thing.
I don't know, man.
I mean, I understand the visceral response.
Yeah.
Duh, that makes complete sense. But then I'm thinking like, what happens if somebody challenges it? What is he going to do?
What am I going to do? I don't know what I would do. And quite frankly, I'd never trained for anything like that. I'd never even brain mapped that before. I'd never even thought about that before. A lot of other instances, I've been in a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of, right? I've done some things that I wished I hadn't done, and I've found myself in some situations I wished I hadn't been in or put myself in a position to be in. But in this case, what the fuck was I gonna do? Like, somebody's gonna come through the door, try to burn my business down, or a whole gang of people. Like, what was I really gonna do? I'd never
looking at it from the law enforcement. I can just, you know, I always think, again, 20 steps ahead. So I'm thinking, what's the district attorney gonna say? They vandalized your place, a property crime. You shot them.
I lied in wait. I waited for them. I antagonized them by being in my store with a firearm, right?
Yep.
Not wanting them to come in and sitting on the other
they just
side.
wanted to talk to you,
I threatened them, and they came through to do whatever they were going to do. I felt my life and my business, my livelihood was threatened, and I shot somebody. My life is over.
Yep.
Right? It's over. And even if later on down the road it had been found that, hey, whatever I did was justified in some way, that would have been, 2, 3, 5, 6 years down the road. Yep. In the meantime, everything had been destroyed. That was a reality of my situation. And by the way, had that happen and I needed to call for help, they weren't fucking coming. No. Like, nobody's coming.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I started thinking about it. It's like, wow, like this is just, I'm with one guy. Like, I'm one guy in this situation. There's got to be a million other people out there that feel the same as me. So I bring that story up because it plays into the podcast. So I started to train a lot. I started to think differently. I started to train medical. I started to train firearms more. I started to think about my preparedness, not just for myself, for my family, for my community. How was I going to be an asset and not a liability? How do I approach, my stuff now from a force multiplier perspective, my physical training, like I don't want to shoot anybody. That's not why I have firearms. I have firearms to protect myself in case somebody's trying to shoot me, kind of thing. So how am I going to put all this together and approach life a little bit differently so that if something I'm not expecting gets thrown into the mix, how am I going to deal with it? And so I took a personal responsibility to that, recognizing how practically irresponsible I had been and not thinking about this before, because the shit just happens. I just told you, I watched it happen in 1992, right? And we've watched it happen a million times since then in other parts of the country or the world since. I never did a thing about it until it hit me in my front yard. That is not the time when you want to be thinking and figuring this shit out. So I changed my mindset a little bit. And so that whole, going into 2021, I started thinking a lot different and doing things a lot differently. In 2021, I started the podcast. And the podcast was really about like going back to, my doors are still closed at this time, by the way. We're just getting ready to reopen them. I need to have some revenue stream, right? Nobody can go to a gym here, so it's not like I can put people in the box. Like I need to have these other programs and things, which we had been working on. I need to have some online programs. I need to have an online membership. I need to have these online services to be able to provide people. I also need a way to be able to get people to find out about it, to find out who we are. We had no brand awareness outside of our little 10-mile radius, right? So the podcast was a great way to do that, but it also allowed me to sort of enrich and nourish myself by bringing people in to have these higher level conversations with, instead of being stuck in my empty little box or be stuck behind a computer trying to figure out how the hell I was going to do this. And so the podcast was spawned, and it really started with, let's talk about health and fitness, and let's talk about it in a way that I think people need to hear about it, which what I had been successful with when my doors were open, which is, let's look at a holistic approach to this. It's not just about bodybuilding. It's not just about abs. It's not just about, how much weight you can lift or how lean you can get or just weight loss or just this or just that. I didn't want to label it as anything. I just wanted to bring some education to the table for people and share experiences and share these conversations, because I found a ton of value in them. And I really felt like other people could too. And the people I was talking to were people that had provided a ton of value for me. So I'm like, let's do this. And so that's how that got started. The whole George Floyd story, that took shape about 6 months after I started the podcast and started to talk about, look, I'm starting to see there's this huge community of people out there that felt and reacted the same way I did to those incidents. And this prepared community is starting to grow, not the doomsday prepper community, right? I think there's a vast distinction there. We can talk about that, but my point of that is like, I wanted to document my training because I was meeting these great people and I was going to these training events, and I was like, guys, fucking people are awesome. Like, these are great people. And by the way, we don't think the same, but these are just great people that are really thinking differently, and I want to be a part of that. And some really high-level people and high-level achievers. And I was like, in terms of being an asset to my community, like, these people that I'm meeting, like, they need help with their health and fitness more than ever. They've been locked down for a year, whatever else, and I have this thing to provide, and I'm pretty good at it. And like, I can talk to them. That's how I can immediately provide value here. But over time, I would like to provide more. This is my way in. Let me start talking to them about health, fitness, wellness, getting stronger, improving immune systems, getting better sleep, balancing out your gut health, having better hormone balance, those kind of things. And again, those are maybe things that people are thinking, whoa, dude, I just want to look better naked. All that shit's important, right? And then at the same time, like, I can be talking about my journey and all these people that I'm meeting with on the training side of things, and building this whole other, kind of sense of awareness, and then ultimately bringing them together. And that's what the podcast is. So what started as a real dichotomy has now started to kind of interweave, and that's how we got connected.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the neat things about your podcast is what you just said, because I haven't really seen anybody do it. And it's really cool because when I first started my podcast, I go, maybe I'll have like a police angle to it, right? And I thought about that too. Maybe I'll interview a lot of first responders. There's so many great first responders out there that aren't just first responders. They're Olympians. They're world-class athletes. Some of them are geniuses. You just wouldn't know because we just, oh, he's just a dumb cop or whatever. And so I kind of felt that too. I didn't know at the time how to brand it well. And at the time also when I launched my podcast, it was a rough time too. It was around Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. And I'm like, maybe that's not a great
talking
thing.
about talking about cops is very unpopular unless you're bashing them,
right?
And talking about defunding departments,
right? And so I love how you have brought in that balance of health, fitness. Oh, and also there's another category which I think is untapped, and I'm glad you're bringing light to it. Is kind of like what Lieutenant Colonel Grossman talks about, like that sheepdog mentality. We need to be prepared. Or Tony Blauer says the same thing, the economics of violence. You can't afford to be a victim, just like your business, and you couldn't afford to be a victim because the trauma and the things you'll have to live with afterwards, it's not enough just to be this great dad or successful entrepreneur. If you don't know how to defend yourself, man, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
And your family.
Yep.
And the people that depend on you. And count on you. So, and we have a duty to be able to do that. And it's not easy. And, there's something for everybody, right? It doesn't, again, there's hand-to-hand combat. There's combatives that you can train. There are tools that you can bring into that to make yourself maybe more effective. And, people want to go, oh, it's all about guns. It's not fucking all about guns. Firearms is a big piece of this for a lot of reasons. That's why I feel so strongly about my Second Amendment rights, going back to, the order of things. But that's not all it is. And so we do talk about that a lot, but going back to law enforcement, I get to talk to first responders. I get to talk to people from the military, the current or ex. I get to talk to people in the world of mental health, in medical, some that cross multiple genres, to talk about how to do these things, but also to meet who these people are and give exposure to that, because these are not fucking weirdos. These are humans, right? And I'm hoping, and I know we have in a lot of cases made impact on other people. Like, man, I see this totally differently. Everything from suicide prevention and awareness as it relates to first responders, and some of the things that we've done there and been able to be a part of, feel so privileged to do that, all the way down to talking to some experts in the world of, firearms, communications, tactical, fitness, things that should matter, or at least they matter to me. And I know there's a lot of people out there that they matter for.
The thing about it too, is I did martial arts for a long time, got a black belt in Kajikembo. And you know what? The beginning, I wanted it selfishly for myself, my own ego, and to be a badass and be able to defend myself. The funny thing is, the more I trained, it's like I got more confident, and I had nothing to prove. I don't even actually want to get in a fight. It's the same thing with guns, actually.
Yep.
The more confident you are with the weapon, the power of it, you respect it, you actually won't try to, what it can do. And
it's not my go-to.
Not at all. And
my mouth is my go-to, or first my legs. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Yes.
My brain, situational awareness is super important, but if I can get the fuck out of there, I'm out. I don't want to be there.
100%, man. I don't want to fight anybody.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And the liability behind it, by the way, if anybody knows what
your
will
life
happen,
is over, man.
Being sued, you don't want it. It's just not even. There's nothing glamorous about that.
Yeah, so we have to be careful with how we talk about the podcast, how we put it out there. We were joking a little bit today. We put something up on TikTok this morning. I don't know if you were here for that. I think you missed that conversation, but we had an awesome guest, and he was in law enforcement, and we had some video of him, and he was on the job. This is for law enforcement, using, holding a firearm, and it got taken down off a social media platform because of that. Period. End of story. For no other reason than that. No context.
Violation of community guidelines. Many of those.
Freedom of speech. This is reality. This is what happens in the state of California, right? By the way, where these companies are located and all that kind of stuff, where these social platforms are located. Yeah, taken down because it violates some policy because somebody didn't like it somewhere. But again, it comes down to that's not what this is all about. It just happens to be, but you can just with that story, how stigmatizing and stigmatized it's become. It's It's an interesting, weird time we're in right now.
Yeah.
It's a hot topic.
I think, but again, I think it's wonderful what you've done and how you've actually found a really nice way to blend everything. And I think you're onto something, because I couldn't figure it out many years ago, and so you're doing it, and you're doing it right. So it's really cool just to see what you're doing and exposing the other side of these first responders in a positive light, because there's something to be. That's the key. There's something to be learned from everybody.
That's the goal. It's not about sensationalizing anything, any person, any event, or officer involved shooting, any critical incident. It's about using it as a way to build or provide a different perspective to everybody. Those are within the community and those outside the community. So if you're one of those people that's like on the fringes of like, I'm not really sure, this guy sounds a little weird, sounds a little intense or whatever. I pride myself on really being critical about the guests that we bring in, because I really think that, I wouldn't bring somebody in if I didn't think people could relate to them in some way, and the person wasn't bringing something of value. That might not be you today, right? That I might not be the right guest for your audience today, and I totally get that, and I respect the hell out of it. I see that as a host, when I'm hosting my own, like I get, but at the same time, I'm hoping that what I'm saying doesn't turn you off, right? That it at least goes, I don't really, that's not really me, but I get what the guy is saying, and he's not being an asshole as he's saying. He's speaking from the heart and from where it comes from, but it's also logical. There's some critical thinking that's behind it, and he's come from a place where it's experiential as well as knowledge based, right? So I'm not just talking about things that I don't know anything about. In fact, that's the best part about what I do, is I get to sit in front of people that know way more about the stuff than I do, which is intriguing for me. So I get, like I said, enriched and nourished along the way in my own way. And if that helps somebody, then
Even better.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to wrap things up, and I wanted to ask you before, any exciting projects or anything that you're working on right now?
It's a great question. So the podcast has really picked up some steam, and I'm really excited about that. It's afforded me some really great opportunities in the work that the team's putting in to do what we originally set out to do, which was to maybe bring more awareness to the products and the programs that Red Dot Fitness has as a business. So we got in this thing for the long play. You mentioned the person that goes 7 podcasts and thinks they're going to get a sponsor that's going to, pay their mortgage, whatever. We don't have any sponsors. We haven't taken a dime from anybody. Red Dot Fitness sponsors the Iron Sights podcast. Do the math on that. This costs money, right? And
Brother, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for over 2 years. I pay my videographer.
Yeah.
He cuts up clips. I haven't made a dime.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, it does the opposite, right? So ultimately you do this if you have a good business mind, with the I guess the intention of making it into something else. So we have a lot of things we're working on right now. We have some big guests that we've had through that have been like, when I go back to the nourishment and enrichment part, it just got me fucking fired up. You being one of those, like the energy coming in just really fires me up for 2023 and what's going on for us there. So the podcast is coming in hot in 2023. We have some products and programs that we do online, as well as we still have the gym. For if people are local, we want people to come in and visit us and see what we have to offer. So putting more emphasis on that, on those products and programs, because we really feel like we've done a really good job with those, and provide those to people and get those out into people's hands. We've done a lot of work to be able to, I think, have a marketing platform now through the podcast to do that. So people are going to hear a little bit more about those coming forward. So that's kind of like the professional side of things. On the personal side of things, I've, recently kind of just got a little bit more reacquainted or reinvigorated, let's just say, with my own physical, training and some of the things I'm doing. And I'm excited about that. And exposing the public and at large to some of the awesome people that not only have on the podcast, but here at the gym, that can help them in lots of different ways. And so those are all things that we're working on going into next year. Not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yep.
Just get the word out and And hey, if we're the right fit for you, we may be the right fit for you. I don't know. Check us out. If you're not, then that's cool. Like there's a lot of great people out there, like you. That might resonate with you more. That you might connect with more. But those are the things we're working on right now for next year. Yeah,
love that, brother. Before I jump into some not lightning round questions, I wanted to ask.
Unlightning round.
I wanted to ask you. Just anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
No, man. I mean, you're hitting all the good stuff. I mean, I enjoy the conversation. I think there's a lot to cover there. Like people may still be asking themselves questions. Well, I don't get the podcast thing.
We'll come back.
Yeah, maybe that's in the unlightning round. But yeah, no, I don't. Man, I think we covered a lot, man.
Yeah,
covered a lot.
All right, I'm curious. What were some choices, or maybe a choice that you made that you think made you who you are today?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and that was just going all in on me. I learned how to do that early on rather than put my everything into somebody else or something else. I think you have to have faith in people, and I think you have to have confidence in people. But if you don't have that in yourself, and you can't count on yourself, and you mentioned this like in the self-defense role or whatever else, then yeah, you're going to be setting yourself up for some major disappointment. I think I probably had less disappointments and been able to take more away from my failures and successes because of just that. Not being afraid to go all in.
I love that. There's this amazing healer who's no longer with us. His name is Dr. Thurman Fleet. He said, when there is no faith, there is no cure.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think of that from a healing perspective, but what you just said, yeah, same thing. You're obviously just such a force, I feel like, in the health and wellness world. Like, who inspires you?
Oh God.
And by the way, it doesn't have to be health and fitness. It can be, I mean, you're doing so much from the tactical perspective, but just, anything.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many people that I follow. And here's the thing. I think a lot of people look out, to be inspired or be motivated by other people. There are tons and tons of people that inspire me for different reasons. But when I like to keep it close to home, and because, you can always search on the internet or, on social media or whatever to find that motivating person or inspiration for the day. For me, it's staying close to home with the friends and families, the employees that I have here. Each one of my employees in particular, also my partner in crime and in life, Cece, those people inspire me every day because I see them getting up, coming to work, putting in the effort to help people get better, stay healthier, achieve the things that they said they wanted to achieve. Even when those clients aren't really putting in the work, they continually come and they grind and they're looking to improve and get better. That's inspiring to me because I think everybody should want to do that. I don't see everybody doing that. And, so, in terms of like people, I mean, if you ask me for a list of people that I enjoy being around and watching, it tends to be people that people wouldn't know.
Yeah.
It's the obscure, person in social media or whatever. They're not out. Most people don't have a social media, it's somebody I know I can call or look up or read about or whatever. Yeah. But, yeah, man, I try to keep it local.
Yeah. I'm a big reader. Is there like a book, or sometimes people have like, oh, don't make me list one book, Joel, but is there a top 1 to 3 or just a book that has such a huge impact on your life that you'd recommend other people read?
Yes. There's been a few. There's an author out there. His name's Michael Pollan. He's written several books, and one of those is The Omnivore's Dilemma. The other one is In Defense of Food. That one had a major impact on me, several years ago. I think that's a good one. It basically talks about where your food comes from. And I think everybody needs to understand that. It'll lay a really good foundation about a lot of the things that you hear. I think guys like you and people like me, or even if I had to name some names, guys like BioLane and
yes,
and Huberman and even Rogan. When you hear him talking, it'll lay a good foundation for where that stuff is coming from. So Michael Pollan, In Defense of Food, is a great one. That's a good one. That one had a big impact on me a long, long time ago. Recently, and I just had this guy in here the other day. His name's John Norris. John Norris is a retired lieutenant with the Department of Fish and Game for California. He has been instrumental in the war on basically the drug cartels coming in from Mexico and having illegal grows that are happening in our wildlands here, the environmental impacts on both on wildlife and the environment in general, and some of the policy changes and the things they're doing out there. I thought it was a fascinating book for a lot of reasons. He tells a lot of stories in that book, but I think it paints a greater picture of kind of where we are as a state, but also as a government, and that when bad guys are allowed to do what they want to do, it's bad for everybody. That it's bad for the environment. It's bad for, and so if you're concerned about the environment, if you're, and by the way, this isn't an anti-marijuana. He was marijuana enforcement task force guy. It's not an anti-marijuana thing. So look, I'm all for it, because I think there's a lot of benefits to it. Yeah. It's how it's being done and who's doing it. But I think, again, it could open your eyes to a lot of things that are going on and give you a pretty good perspective. It's pretty fucking entertaining too. He's such a good dude.
Sweet.
Yeah. It's called The Hidden War. John Norris, The Hidden War.
Last two questions. We'll wrap it up. I'm just curious, any rituals or hacks or practices that you do on a regular basis?
No hacks, lots of rituals. From a basic perspective, I work on trying to get my protein in every day, right? That's a constant challenge, I think, for a lot of people. So making sure I get my protein starting there from a nutrition perspective, and I generally find that my nutrition for the rest of the day can kind of stay on track. So that's a ritual for me, like just making sure my breakfast is fucking same every day, right? Like there's certain pieces to that. So that's part of it from a ritual perspective. The other thing is always at some point during the day, giving and showing gratitude for something, right? And then another ritual I have is I have a daily practice. This might sound funny to people. It's kind of a give and take here. Every night I go for a walk. Every day I get outside. I live in the concrete jungle, but getting outside is important for me, fresh air. And so I'll walk 4 or 5 miles, a night. I take the dog with me. And that's a big part of it. Part of that ritual for me also is I have a really nasty cigar habit. So that's like on the flip side. But I'll do that. Getting outside my own head. Sometimes it's silent, just breathing in the fresh air and chilling and whatever. And sometimes it's throwing on a podcast. Sometimes it's talking to a buddy that I haven't reached out to, show gratitude, give gratitude.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, whatever. But that's a ritual. And by the way, if you can habit stack, maybe that's the hack. And that is, again, like I love to learn and hear from new people. So again, that podcast while walking the dog,
Everybody's winning.
Yeah.
I love that. Last but not least, Scott, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about Red Dot Fitness and Iron Sights?
Awesome. Yeah, Iron Sights podcast. You can find us on YouTube, like and subscribe there. There's tons of content. Again, if anything I've said has interested you, I think what people are usually shocked by when they go there is to see the variety of guests that we have and the variety of topics we talk about. So Iron Sights on YouTube. You can go to at Iron Sights Podcast on Instagram if you want to find out more about the podcast there. That's a great way to get me if you're looking to reach out, want to know a little bit more, want some information. You can DM me there. I always respond. It may take me a little time. I know a lot of people say that. Usually it doesn't take me very much time because I have a ton of anxiety about leaving people hanging. So you can get us there, or at red _dot_fitness is the Instagram for Red Dot. So you can kind of follow along with some of the things we do there. We're just trying to send out positive messaging there, or let's just say affirmative messaging and some call to action stuff to get people to kind of analyze things. We'll show some cool videos or whatever. But if you really want to know about us, go to rdftrainonline.com. At rdftrainonline.com, you can kind of get all the information about us, like what's happening in the gym, what's happening online, all the different things we do. Even the podcast is listed there or whatever. So that's a great place. And when you get there, again, we have a gym. This is not like an idea with a website. We have a gym. We have a full staff of people here. So when people go there are ways to contact us. You can use the contact page if you prefer email. I already mentioned the Instagram if you want to DM us. or you can call us directly, and somebody's going to be here to pick up the phone. It might be me, right? It's probably going to be Kayla. She's our right hand here at the gym, or you might even get Cece on the other end, or one of our other coaches or staff members. One of the most important things I want people to know about us is that we want to know about you. So going back to, how do you talk to people and get them down the path to success? It starts with a high level of awareness of the person, that wants to be successful, as well self-awareness, as well as high level awareness from us. So I don't want people to feel like everything is very transactional now, and through the like, hey, fill out the form and we'll set an appointment and whatever else. You can do that. We have those options. We just want to talk. So don't think that that's weird. And if you tell us you want to talk, we're going to call you, we're going to email you, and we're going to keep doing it until you tell us not to, because it's important for us. So that's how to get a hold of us, and that's what you should expect once you do that.
Boom. Amazing. Scott Howell, thanks for being on the podcast, brother. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks, man.